God, how many videos is it gonna take? This is like over an hour of footage now. This is ridiculous. All right, the move action. Okay, no, don't worry about that for now. If you go to, I've sorted this out. I'm trying to make this a little bit more obvious. So the instance is like everything, like the game controller, the level controller, stuff like that. If you go to the instance controller, which is, like I said before, is what handles the game loop. This needs a rewrite. Currently, the communication between the team controller and the game controller, the team controller and the instance controller is very minimal. It just kind of like tells the team controller. Excuse me. So there's a main where it like gets the active actors. Right now this is set up so it just gets the actors at the start, so you can't add any actors after you're already in here, which is stupid, and that's got to change. But the main loop just goes, it gets the next entity, it gets its team, it tells the team, hey, invoke the turn for this entity, and then the entity, the team controller will get back to you, and you'll be like, okay, hey, I'm calling this function back to say I'm finished, and then it'll continue, and then it'll update the level, which actually tells the actors, hey, you should go, like, change your position, or, you know, so on and so forth. That's how that works. But this needs to be reworked to add, you know, the order of operations. So like some people might go first before others, depending on their speed and stuff. So that might need to change, as well as being able to add entities in the middle of the battle. Like if someone joins, they're not going to be part of the active actors list. This should really happen in the middle here somewhere. Don't know what this is. I'm not even going to read it. So you can read that and tell me whether or not it's it's relevant. This is how I'm like, if, you know, I've got some weird, like, funky stuff to do with tags here. So in the tag object, it's like for that specific entity that, like, it's their turn, they belong to this team. If your team was flagged as a peon, which means it can move around and do stuff, then you have to wait for a little bit as well, just to make it, like, nice. This is where, like, the XCOM kind of stuff will go. But the team controllers, when you've asked for them, what needs to change is the player controller. Like the goblin, like I've got no stuff for, like, you know, in D&D you can do 2 actions per turn. None of that's actually in here. All that happens is for the goblins, they when they do their turn, they like choose whether or not they're going to be doing move in an action or action then move, or whether or not they're just doing one or twice, because it's all hard coded for just knowing that the only actions available are move and action, and that's it. But in reality, for D&D movement, you can move, and then you can action, and then you can move a little bit, and then you can move a little bit. Like, the move it can set up, and you only have like a certain amount of movement per turn based on your speed, but you can do it, split it up however you want. None of that's actually implemented. And although the goblins, like, they do 2 things, and then they'd say, hey, we finished our move to the instance controller, the player controller I still haven't set up, and I haven't messed with since I basically created it. So when you're controlling these characters, like, it says to the using controller, hey, give me the information and stuff, but it's still just doing it based on one action. So this needs to be set up to be similar to the goblin controller, where, like, it works within the limitation of its turn. Like, it can move and then attack. So this guy's moved, this guy's moving, and then he attacked. This guy's moving over to here. This guy's moving. This guy just attacked, and now he's moving. So he did 2 things. Now, if you go to your character, and you notice how also it doesn't switch to the next entity until they've finished their animation. That doesn't happen for this guy either, but you can only do 1 action. So if I'll move over here, he moves, but then it switches to the next guy, and he's still moving. So that's an issue. Furthermore, the movement mechanics, although it looks like you're stepping from one spot to the other, what's actually happening under the hood is the move action is just spawning you, it's doing a algorithm to, like, see which things you can actually move to using the this fancy function over here. Don't even know how to say this, but it's using this function to be able to, like, it reads your speed and stuff, and, like, it works outwards. Like, this is just a pathfinding algorithm, but it sees which ones you can go to, and once the actors, like, the team controller is like, okay, I want to move this guy to over here, the movement just teleports you over there, and then all the movement is actually just an animation. And so what's happening in the background of the goblin controller, the AI, is that it's waiting for the thing to finish its animation before it says it's finished the move. So here it is. So yield return, you wait while move action is complete. So for each action and doing action, so it chooses the action it's going to do, then it does the action. It does, for example, move action, and then it waits until the move action is complete. And so when the actor is doing the animation for this move action, it sets the flag inside of the action like object to say, okay, this action is completed, and that actually signals to the Goblin team controller, okay, I can end my move now. None of this exists in the player controller. Player controller is very simple, so that needs to be updated to be the same, if that makes sense. Another footnote on the team controllers is that the reason the team controller is set up like this, not only it allows you to control your things and allows some AIs to have, it allows AIs to have different behavior from other AIs. So the goblins, they just do this, but like you could have a different team controller that's more focused on like teamwork. So like it'll have functions in here for like calculating precisely what to do for this specific situation. It might look forward into the future a little bit, but a different one like the goblins, they might be stupid, so they might not do that. Like the AI could be different and written differently based on which team it's in. It's worth noting as well, the entities are given to each team based on their tag cur team. So that's just one of the extra tags that points to a certain point in the DC, and that has a string that says exactly what team it's in. So for example, player character is part of player, spaceman is part of goblins, spider is part of goblins. They're just using that. Barrel is part of default. Default just ends the turn straight away. Everybody has a turn, but in the choice of the barrel, it just ends it. It's fine. The reason there's default team and co-team is so that that's a holdout. I haven't actually done anything with that, but like let's say for the spaceman, if you take control of him for a little bit, let's say you do like a mind control thing, you can change his co-team to be by the player, and that way you can control him, but then after a certain amount of turns, it turns back into the default team, so it goes back to being goblins. Another idea I had was for a team controller to be like for stats. So one team controller can be for the confused stat. So like if you become confused and like you're walking around like an idiot, what controls that is that the team that you put on is the confused team, and the confused team controller just like it has AI that says like just move around randomly or like attack randomly and stuff because you're confused, and then after a certain amount of time you can go back to the previous team that you were on. So that's an idea. So yeah, there'll be a separate, instead of goblin team controller, it'll be like confused team controller, and so everybody that's confused will be on this team controller. Okay. So this needs an overhaul. The move action as well, which I don't know how I got distracted so much, but if I go to emove, which is the move action that is applied, the emove just teleports you to that position. What it should do is it should actually, did I start this? Yeah, file remove. I was about to start doing this and I didn't do it, but there should be a like a list of movements that happen from tile to tile to tile. So once you get the path going from A to B, you should have a list of these things and you should do them one by one by one. And then like that way, like you pass over different tiles. So like if something activates if you step on a tile, that'll only happen if you actually move to each individual tile in that row, and that's what you should be doing with get path. I haven't actually implemented any of that, and that'll be a pain in the ass to implement, I'm sure. But there you go. And each time you move from tile to tile, of course, it takes away from your overall movement that you can do in that turn and stuff. Like that's supposed to be in the instance controller. None of that's implemented. The tooltips in here. So when you mouse over things, and I'll show you in the preference. The prefabs. Stuff in the spaceman. Like this stuff is like tied to each individual spaceman or each individual spider. They all have their own tooltip thing up here. That should be moved to its own separate object, and that's what this was, but I haven't actually done anything with it. The tooltip handler. See, it's like there's nothing in there. This should have all the stuff like there, and so this should spawn these items like without them actually sitting on the prefab. I don't know how you do that, but yeah, it really shouldn't be on individual prefabs. It should be somewhere else. On the level controller, so that's an instance level controller. This is the thing that handles the level. It's separated a little bit. So you got entities handling here, and you got the map stuff, and you got graphic stuff. Graphic stuff should not be in a level controller, I don't think. I think this should be moved to a separate controller just to separate data from graphics. I think that's it. Oh, okay, the mesh handler. So the mesh, yeah, so like I said, in Blender, I have these files here, and this creates the tiles. And the tiles are an object, and you can see them over here. So if you, I actually talked about this, which is kind of crazy, because inside the level object, you have a vector3 tile map. And that in those individual tiles look like this, where they have this stuff. Verts is not really that important, but you have the entities, which is like everything that's on that tile, whether it be a barrel, a weapon, whatever. You have the neighbor tiles, so a list of all the tiles that you are connected to directly. So like if you, this is used for, like, for example, the movement function. If you want to move from tile to tile, it checks your neighbors and to see if you can move directly to them. Yeah, and it has a position, of course, which is when it creates the mesh for these things, it becomes the average of the vertices. But the mesh handler is an object that I have that takes this mesh and just does it. Like, originally when I was doing it, I just made like an array and just programmatically like did like a 10 by 10 array of like tiles, square tiles, and then just added the neighbors that way. But I did this and made a function that can take an OBJ file. If you go File, Export, OBJ, here's a couple of levels right here. And then it takes those files, which you need to save it as an OBJ, and then you need to import it as a TXT. Because if you go to Resources, Levels, this is what the OBJ actually looks like. A bunch of vertices, a bunch of stuff like that. So if you go to Nomagard, which is this one here, it's got all your vertices and stuff, but then it goes to faces as well, and this is what's important. So this actually spawns like the triangles and stuff within that OBJ. And you know, if you've got multiple objects, it goes to the different object with the different vertices and different faces. So the mesh handler does a crazy amount of stuff. It's like this is like the most obtuse thing, but it's got multiple functions here that are useful, but the one that actually uses the OBJ file to begin with is like 300 or 400 lines in. Gen mesh map. Here we go, string txt. So it takes the string, this is the level from the txt file, it splits it by new line, and it goes line by line and reads all the vertices and stuff and does what it does to actually create it. To actually create the tiles and everything. So like if that line starts with a hash, that means it continues because that's a comment in the OBJ. If it starts with an O, that means there's a new mesh map because there's a new object in there. If it's V, that means that's a vertex. So it like creates a list of positions and stuff like that. It's a whole mess. And then face, whatever, it does all the face, and then it creates the mesh maps. And then from the mesh maps, it actually creates the tiles over here. So for each face in map face, it does that, but then it finds the ones that are like next to each other. So inside of here, you see that there is this will actually, when it'll look like this, where like there's like two triangles, one here and one here. It looks at, for each set of 4, it looks for the center one and the connecting one, and then like it combines it together, I think, if I remember how this works. You'll have to look through the function if you want to edit it, but this is all to say, yeah, and then this mesh handler also handles like actually spawning the mesh itself afterwards. Like if you wanted to use that as a floor for the map temporarily, which is what I'm using here. So like you see it doesn't exist because the mesh handler hasn't actually created it. Once you spawn it in, there it is, there's the floor. And also, like I said before, the emove thing, it spawns this thing as well. And so it's all textured correctly and everything, so you can apply whatever material you want to it. But that just takes it from the raw tile data. So this isn't a mesh, this is just, it's a created mesh from the tiles that are within the level that are spawned from this mesh. So it's complicated. So what I wanted to do is implement, like, since it has to go through neighbors to be able to get from point to point, like if you wanted to make a ladder, for example, between here and here, I wanted you to be able to do this. Like you've just created an object there that like connects these two vertices, and then you can put this into a different selection. And so this will be like ladders. And so that way, when it spawns the map and it spawns the tile or whatever, it knows that this tile here is actually a big ladder, and so it can do a the tile. There'll be like a tile here that it spawns in, and then there's a tile here that spawns in, and those are neighbors, and there's a tile here that it spawns in, and those are neighbors. But this tile is flagged as a ladder, so that when like a guy wants to like move up it, for example, he can do so. An alternative to this. Like that's, for example, like if he does a movement action and he wants to move to up here using the ladder, you can set it up so that the movement function recognizes each individual tile as like, you know, flagged as a ladder, so therefore it needs to use the ladder movement and climbing and stuff to be able to do that. I also wanted to make it so you can like set the material for each tile. So like I've got it so that each individual tile, there's a capabilities check when you go over it to see whether or not like it's a specific material. So like if it's mud, it's going to slow you down, but if you have proficiency in mud, like you can walk through a bunch of mud, so you know you got proficiency in it, you'd be able to go at like normal speed through it. So each individual tile, you could potentially just do this and like move that to a different thing and name this mud and do that. But an alternative to doing the ladder trick and also this is probably just to have this be one big map, but then go into here and then set the material. I haven't looked into this, but I have a feeling that if you set the material, it'll change the in the Nomengard TXT, it'll have like a list of faces that are certain materials as well in the OBJ, because OBJ natively supports materials. So those specific materials, when you spawn the mesh, the tile for it, you should flag that tile as being, you know, the material or with the flags that are representative of that tile. That makes sense. So the material, like the mud material, it sees there's mud here, and so it tells that tile that it's a mud tile. And so when you move through it, it knows it's a mud tile. Okay, those are my plans. What this does make difficult for is custom terrain. Like if you have, I don't know, a spell for like, you know, carving a hole in the wall, I don't know how the hell you're going to be able to actually carve a hole in the wall, because, you know, some of these cells are really oblique, right? You got some weird, strange shapes. I did it this way so you can get weird, strange shapes in like the movement, and like things that are like triangular inside of a tile mesh and stuff like that. But if you have something that like creates a mesh on top of it, I don't know how you're going to link up the tiles properly. So I don't know. Maybe perhaps you could. So when you create, like if you wanted to create a bridge between two tiles, it automatically does this, where it spawns like some tiles. And this is like in the game, so it just purposely, it spawns these tiles like this, but then it sets this to be neighbors with this tile, so that you can move across and do it that way. So that's when you want to create a bridge, or alternatively, if you wanted to carve a hole in the wall, it checks to make sure there's no tiles there already, and then it just creates like a platform for you to stand on, and then it connects these tiles to that manually. But yeah, that's, I don't know how that, I don't know, yeah, the more you think about it, the less that works, but that's the idea. I think that's that. Oh my god. What else is left? I haven't done saves yet. So, saving stuff. So, if I go to the drawing, the TBC stuff, I've got the load controller for saving and stuff, and level injector for like taking that save data and actually applying it to the game controller to be sent downwards into the instance controller. I haven't actually done any of that when saving. I don't know whether or not to use JSONs or CSVs. JSONs make more sense, but CSVs allow me to basically just use the same systems I have here. Probably JSONs make more sense, but like I can imagine me doing a save file, and it just like just takes the entire tree and splits it out like this and downwards, and you just load each individual entity into the world as it is. So there'll be like tiles here, and there'll be like, you know, and this has, you know, pos x y z and whatever and type, and, you know, entity, and that entity has a name, that name, but here's items and so on and so forth. That item might reference a different item here, so it's like item blech. This is item blech. So that could work with CSVs, but JSONs make more sense. I think they're a little bit more compressed and easier to use and cleaner, but I know how CSVs work, so who knows. So So inventory ideas. Oh, inventory ideas. Okay, I think this is the last thing. And I won't make a new video for this. This will be the big last one. So the inventories. I go to this. All right. Jesus. Okay. So inventories. I want there to be like I showed in over here. You go to instance panel and you go to the selection context panel. Turn it on. I want to have like a tile-based inventory system, just like that. So my idea for doing that, like, you know, having like Resident Evil and stuff, like items that you can like drag into different slots and stuff. My idea for that is to have, how am I even going to describe this? I don't even know. Okay, here we go. So over here, I have a list of items that I've taken from the D&D 5e like website, and like it has like, I've categorized them just to like get an idea of what this is, because I haven't actually implemented any of this yet. But like, let's say for an item that is a bedroll, the bedroll has a cost, has a weight, has, you know, how much it can stack by. In this case, is 1. Has inventory slots, which I'll get to that in a second, and it has a slot code. This is actually the stuff that'll be in the slot code is just for my use here, and like pounds, for example, is what D&D 5e website says, but I want them in kilos in the game, so I've changed, just have a conversion here. So this is the stuff that actually will do it. The code changes the item slots, and so this is kind of the map of different cells that this item will take up inside the inventory. So I've done a system here where I can just put in whatever this here. So I wanted the bedroll to look like, you know, laying down, so I've given it a slot code of that, and this is the map here, and this map automatically fills this out, and then it makes a list, and then puts it there, and then puts it up into here. So it just does a lookup function. So I can like, these are all the different codes for the different inventory like things. And then, so for each item that you have in your inventory, it'll have a thing called item inventory slots, and those inventory slots will like say how big that item is. And so if you have an item that's an inventory, you can put things inside of it. It also has a list of inventory slots. So for the case of the backpack, well, you know, say you have a backpack. Backpack looks like this. This is the shape of the backpack inside of an inventory. So like if you were to put it on your person has like a big square that you can put stuff in, and then you put the backpack inside that big square. Now you can open that backpack, and inside that backpack you can put anything in these slots inside of that backpack. That's how that works. So the way I want the inventory system to work is that on your person you can only hold inventories. You cannot hold items. So that way your yeah, here we go. You start with a 5x5 grid, and you add your wisdom and intelligence modifier, and for each extra one of that, it goes to the right a little bit, so it becomes, you know, a 6x5 grid and then a 7x5 grid if you have +2. And then for every con plus strength, it goes in the bottom way. And so you have items like a barrel. If you want to carry a barrel full of stuff, you need con plus strength of +2 to be able to actually fit that barrel inside of your inventory. That means you need to be like big burly dude to be able to hold the barrel, because barrels are stupid. Chests, to be able to strap it to yourself, it's quite difficult, so you need to be quite wise to do it, and so your wisdom plus intelligence need to be +2. Meanwhile, alternative to that, your backpack is quite small. Like, that's, of course, this would be the standard, it's 4x4, so you need like -2 in either of them to not be able to carry a backpack. And then you have things like buckets, quivers, pouches, and they all have different like things. Like, for example, buckets are open, like they have an open top, so if you like fall, for example, there's a chance your inventory might empty onto the floor, and whatever's in an open inventory will just fall out. So that's why you probably want something with a closed inventory like a backpack. So that's what these are. So like your inventory, every person has a person inventory, and this changes size for that. And then inside that you can put other inventories, like for a backpack, and inside that backpack you can put your items. Which of these? And each of these have the different shapes. For example, the shovel is like looks like that, and the pole is massive because it's like a 10-foot pole. So like it would be, the pole was quite funny actually. So you need to be kind of wise to be able to hold a pole. A pole would act like an inventory. You can just put it on your person, but it like stretches out left, right. So you need like a modifier of +1 to be able to hold it. Anyway, those are some ideas. That's how I want the inventory system to work. Yeah, that's it. All right. Good luck making the game. Hopefully you can come back to this and it kind of makes sense. Yeah. Jesus, I've been talking for a while. All right, good luck. Have fun. Bye.